At 6:18 on a Wednesday morning, 4 days before my niece graduated from high school, I saw my husband's car behind my sister's house and heard something that made me count backward 18 years before I let myself cry. "We tell Sophie after graduation," David said. "She deserves to know I'm her father." Rachel gets the old story, nothing else. My sister answered quietly, "You spent the night here again. How long do you think we can keep doing this?" I was beside Melissa's kitchen window with a graduation album pressed against my chest, staring at my husband barefoot on my sister's tile floor, in the same blue shirt he had worn to dinner with me the night before. I didn't go inside or call his name. I walked back to my car, set the album on the passenger seat, and opened the calendar on my phone. Sophie Carter had been born on June 11, 18 years earlier. I counted backward, then checked the dates again. The likely conception window fell in the final months of my father's life, when I had spent almost every evening at hospice and David had repeatedly offered to take care of things for me. My name is Rachel Dawson. I'm 47, and I work as a quality assurance coordinator for a home health system outside Columbus, Ohio. Most of my job involves reviewing events when something doesn't line up. A missed visit, a record entered at the wrong time, 2 people remembering the same afternoon differently. One discrepancy can be nothing. A pattern usually isn't. That morning, I had no pattern yet. I had a husband in the wrong kitchen before sunrise, 1 sentence about my niece's father, and an 18-year timeline reaching back to the worst year of my life. So I did what I had spent almost 20 years teaching myself to do at work. I did not decide what the facts meant until I knew where they belonged. David and I had been married for 24 years. If you had asked me the day before whether he was a good husband, I would have said yes. He remembered my coffee order. When my father got sick, David drove me to hospice when I was too tired to drive. Once, near the end, I found him asleep in a plastic waiting room chair because he had promised not to leave until I was ready. I had loved him for moments like that. Melissa was 6 years younger, funny, and impulsive, and she called me whenever a problem became too expensive or complicated to solve with charm. When Sophie was born, Melissa told us the father wanted nothing to do with either of them. I believed her. I became Sophie's godmother, then the aunt who was almost always available. I helped with braces, school rides, summer plans, and last fall's college essays. I sat through a middle school musical in which Sophie had 4 lines and missed 2. The album on my passenger seat held those years. Sophie at 9 with 2 missing front teeth, at 13 pretending she didn't want pictures, and at 17 beside me in a college parking lot, both of us soaked after the umbrella turned inside out. None of those memories felt false. That was what made the possibility in front of me so difficult to understand. I drove home by a route David would not expect, and found him in our kitchen 40 minutes later, pouring coffee into his travel mug. "You're up early," he said. "So are you." He smiled. "Couldn't sleep. Went to the gym." The answer arrived easily. He had changed into a gray polo, but the blue shirt was folded over the back of a dining chair. David kissed my forehead and said, "Big week for Sophie. Melissa's probably losing her mind." Probably. After he left, I went upstairs and opened the cedar box where I kept old planners. I had started using paper calendars because my father did. He taught chemistry for 30 years and wrote everything down in small, square handwriting. After he died, I kept the habit. I found the planner from the hospice year beneath old tax folders. April 3. Dad worse. Stayed late. April 7. David helping Mel with garage. April 15. Hospice meeting. D helping Mel move boxes. May 2. Dad confused today. David took Mel's car in. May 19. Stayed overnight with Dad. D at Melissa's. Nothing on those pages proved an affair. David could have fixed a garage door, and Melissa could have needed help with her car. My father had been dying, and my marriage had felt like the one stable thing holding me upright. But I remembered thanking David. I remembered standing in our bedroom after my father had stopped recognizing my voice and telling my husband, I didn't know what I would do without him. "You focus on your dad," he had said. "I'll take care of everything else." At the time, I had heard love. 18 years later, I was no longer sure what everything else had included. For the next 2 days, I watched without asking questions. David went to work, asked whether I'd confirmed the restaurant reservation after Sophie's graduation, and slept beside me with the same steady breathing I had listened to for more than 2 decades. Melissa texted our family group about cap and gown pictures. Our mother, Elaine, reminded everyone to arrive early. Sophie sent me a photograph of silver graduation shoes and asked whether they looked too adult. I told her no 18-year-old had ever asked that question while wearing silver heels. She sent back 3 laughing emojis. I stared at them longer than I should have. On Friday morning, David said he had an early client meeting. After he left, I opened our household toll account. The transponder was attached to both vehicles, and I had handled the account for years. I filtered David's trips for 3 months. At first, nothing looked unusual. Then I stopped looking at destinations and started looking at time. 5:52 a.m. 7 a.m. 5:41 a.m. 3 a.m. Repeated early exits on the same route serving Melissa's side of town. Not every week and not enough to look strange without searching for a pattern. The dates lined up with mornings Melissa had mentioned opening the salon early, handling deliveries, or being too tired to make family breakfast. I checked the most recent entry, Wednesday, 5:46 a.m. The morning I had found David barefoot in her kitchen. I sat at our dining table with the toll history open and felt something inside me become very quiet. Whatever had happened 18 years ago had not stayed 18 years ago. Suddenly, the sentence I had overheard made sense. Rachel gets the old story. Nothing else. They weren't only planning to tell Sophie who her father was. They were preparing a version of the truth. The question was how much of my life they had already edited to make that version possible. The album was still on the passenger seat when I came home that afternoon. I carried it inside and set it on the kitchen table, not because I planned to give it to Sophie yet, but because I needed to understand what I had already put inside. For weeks, I had chosen photographs by feeling, first day of kindergarten, Christmas mornings, soccer uniforms, birthday cakes. Now I looked at dates. The photograph from Sophie's second birthday was taken in my mother's backyard. Melissa held the cake. David stood behind her, looking towards Sophie instead of the camera. There was nothing incriminating about it. Real life rarely preserved betrayal with arrows pointing toward it. What I had were ordinary moments that no longer meant exactly what I thought they meant. I turned to a photograph from the summer my father died. Melissa stood beside David at a family barbecue. They were not touching. The date was 3 days after an entry in my planner that said David had spent the evening helping Melissa move furniture. At work, when a record looked wrong, I searched for where 2 independent pieces of information touched. By Saturday morning, I had found one. Years earlier, when my mother replaced her old computer, I moved her photographs and documents to a new laptop. Elaine asked me to keep a backup drive of the family records. I still had it. Most of the archive contained recipes and family plans. Then I found a thread from 16 years earlier between my mother and Melissa. The subject line was, "Call me." Melissa had written, "I got the results. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now." My mother answered 19 minutes later, "Do not put anything else in writing. Call me tonight." Melissa replied, "I can't keep pretending this never happened." Elaine's final message was shorter. "Rachel cannot find out like this. We need to think about Sophie first." There was no attachment or laboratory name, only the word results and my own name. I printed the messages and drove to my mother's house with tablecloth clips for the graduation party. I helped her arrange photographs of Sophie along the dining room wall. "Hard to believe she's 18, I said. Elaine smiled. "Melissa did a good job. She had help. We all helped." I clipped another picture to the string. "Do you remember when Sophie was 2? Melissa seemed overwhelmed that year. My mother's hands stopped for less than a second. She was a single mother. Was that when she started talking about finding Sophie's father? Elaine looked at me. "Why are you asking me this now?" It was the first question she answered with a question. I shrugged. Graduation makes you think about old years. My mother turned back to the photographs. "Some years are better left where they are, Rachel." She said it softly, almost kindly. I drove home knowing more. That evening, while David showered, I opened our home office file cabinet. Behind our insurance folder sat a thin file labeled Education. Inside was a statement from a 529 savings plan I had never seen. The beneficiary was Sophie Carter. The account owner was David Dawson. He had opened it 12 years earlier. The contributions were regular, often near birthdays or after David received bonuses. A 529 account did not prove paternity. An uncle could save for a niece. But David had never told me. For years, I had listened to Melissa worry about money. I had paid Sophie's application fees, covered part of her orthodontic balance, and bought her high school laptop. I had done those things willingly. I refused to let anger rewrite my own choices. But I remembered how often Melissa said, "You know me, I hate asking." And how often David smiled after I agreed to help and said, "That's Rachel, she'll never let Sophie go without." At the time, it sounded like admiration. Now I wondered whether it had also been logistics. The next day, David gave me the first piece of the story they intended to tell. We were loading bottled water for the graduation party when I mentioned that Melissa seemed distracted. "She's nervous about after graduation," he said. "Why?" "There are things Sophie deserves to know now that she's an adult." I waited. David sighed. "Melissa made a mistake a long time ago. We all did stupid things when we were younger." The word mistake landed carefully. "What kind of mistake?" He finally looked at me. "I don't think it's my story to tell." 3 hours later, Melissa called about the restaurant reservation. Before hanging up, she became quiet. "Rachel, after graduation, I may need to tell you something." "About what?" "Something from a long time ago. It was one mistake. 18 years ago. I don't want you hearing it from someone else and thinking it means more than it did." The phrasing was not identical to David's, but it was close enough that I could hear the rehearsal in both conversations. By Sunday night, I understood. They would tell Sophie David was her biological father and tell me it had happened once, 18 years ago. They would say they had stayed silent for Sophie and ask me to measure their present against a version of the past they had already edited. They would never mention Wednesday morning. I stood in my kitchen looking at the album, the emails, the 529 statement and dates copied from my planners. I finally saw the system clearly. David relied on my loyalty. Melissa relied on my willingness to help. My mother, if my suspicion was right, relied on my belief that family problems were mine to carry. No one needed to meet in a room and design my life. They only needed to know what I would probably do. They had made my kindness predictable enough to build around. On Monday, Sophie sent me a photograph of her graduation cap. 3 days, she wrote. I told her I was proud of her, then made one decision. Sophie would graduate before I asked a question. David and Melissa had already taken 18 years of truth from her. I would not let them take that day too. By Thursday afternoon, I was sitting beneath the school gymnasium lights, while Sophie crossed the stage in a blue gown and silver shoes. David stood when her name was called. Melissa cried. My mother pressed a tissue beneath one eye. I applauded with everyone else. Each of the 3 people beside me knew a different version of the same secret. I was the only one who now knew the versions no longer matched. After the ceremony, Sophie left with friends for a graduation gathering. I hugged her, watched her disappear into a car full of 18-year-olds, then turned to David, Melissa, and my mother. I need the 3 of you at my house tonight, I said. David frowned. What for? I picked up Sophie's album from the seat beside me. 6:30. For once, I was going to let them arrive without knowing which version of the truth they needed to prepare. At 6:27, David arrived first. He walked into the kitchen, saw the folder, and gave me the careful smile he used when he thought I was overthinking. Melissa came 5 minutes later, and my mother followed her. No one sat until I did. I opened the folder. David, when did you open the college account for Sophie? His expression changed. What college account? The 529. David pulled out a chair. Years ago. I wanted to help. Why didn't you tell me? It was my money. That wasn't my question. My mother said my name softly, the way she did when she wanted me to stop. I turned to Melissa. When was Sophie conceived? She stared at me. Rachel. When? David exhaled. It happened once, he said. A long time ago. There it was, exactly the version of the story they had prepared for me. One mistake, Melissa added. 18 years ago. David leaned toward me. We were scared. Melissa was pregnant. Your father was dying. Everything was a mess. The mention of my father almost broke my calm. I looked at my mother. What year did you find out about the test results? Elaine's head lifted. Then she said, Sophie was almost 2. I remember how long no one answered after that. Melissa whispered, Mom and I watched my mother realize that she had just answered a question I had never actually asked. You knew for 16 years. I thought it was over, Elaine said. I thought they made one terrible mistake and I was trying to protect you. From what? From losing your marriage. From hating your sister. From looking at that child and seeing something she never chose. She pointed toward the album. What good would the truth have done then? I looked at David. When did the affair end? Rachel, please. When? 18 years ago. Then why were you barefoot in Melissa's kitchen at 6:18 Wednesday morning wearing Tuesday night's shirt? For the first time that evening, David did not have an answer ready. I went over early, he said. We needed to talk about Sophie. What time did you arrive? I don't know. 6? Melissa looked down. David noticed. She called me. She was upset. Melissa's face changed. You came over Tuesday night. Melissa. You were there before midnight. My mother turned toward David. What is she talking about? David's voice sharpened. This is why I didn't want to do this tonight. Melissa gets emotional, and suddenly every conversation becomes, Don't do that, Melissa said. Do what? Make me sound unstable because you're scared. David pushed his chair back. You kept pulling me into this for years. Melissa laughed once. You told me you were going to leave her. That was 18 years ago. You said it last Christmas. The kitchen became quiet enough that I could hear the refrigerator motor turn on. David stared at Melissa as though she had betrayed him. Melissa kept going. You said after Sophie graduated we would finally stop lying. I said we would tell Sophie the truth. You said Rachel would survive it because she always keeps the family together. I looked at David. He did not deny it. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. We knew you loved Sophie, she said. We knew you would still show up for her. That sentence hurt because it was true. David had counted on my loyalty. Melissa had counted on my generosity. My mother had counted on my sense of duty. Each had taken something decent in me and used it to predict what I would tolerate. You all made choices based on what you thought I would do, I said. Not one of you ever let me choose. I looked at David. Our marriage is over. He started to speak. No, you have had 18 years of edited versions. I'm not listening to another one tonight. David left 20 minutes later, and Melissa waited until his car was gone before leaving separately. My mother stopped near the front door. I really did think I was protecting you, she said. I believe you. Relief flickered across her face. That doesn't make it right. The next afternoon, Melissa told Sophie. Sophie asked me to stay. David was not there. She sat with the album in her lap while Melissa explained that David was her biological father. Sophie cried quietly. Then she asked, Did you know when you made this? No. She looked at the album. Do you regret all of it? I moved closer. No. But if you'd known? I didn't choose the lie, Sophie. I chose you every time I showed up. She began crying harder. I did too. The divorce took months. David tried to explain himself. I stopped answering explanations that began with what he had meant to do. Melissa and David did not build a life together after mine ended. Without secrecy, they seemed to have little left except blame. My relationship with my mother changed quietly too. I still called and visited, but I stopped arranging every appointment, ride, and family problem. For years, I had treated being needed as proof that I mattered. I no longer did. That fall, I took a weekend trip I had postponed twice because Melissa needed help. I turned off my phone for an afternoon and walked beside Lake Erie without checking anyone's calendar but my own. Sophie and I found our way back slowly. The first time we met for breakfast after college started, we talked about a terrible professor and burnt coffee before either of us mentioned David. Before we left, she pulled the graduation album from her bag. She opened to a photograph of us at a school fair when she was 9. You remember this? I smiled. You made me carry that stuffed bear all day. You won it for me. I regretted it immediately. She laughed. The memory belonged to both of us. For months, I had looked at dates as if every year of my life needed to be labeled true or false. Eventually, I understood life was not that clean. There had been lies around me. There were also choices I made freely, love I gave honestly, and moments no one could steal. If someone has ever told you they hid the truth to protect you, remember this. Love does not give another person the right to decide which parts of your own life you are strong enough to know. Tell me in the comments what you would find hardest to forgive: the affair, the hidden paternity, or the parent who knew and stayed silent. And could you keep loving an innocent person whose story was tied to the betrayal? I'd also love to know where you're watching from tonight. For more stories about family, dignity, and the choices people face when trust breaks, subscribe and stay with us. I'd be honored to share the next one with you.